Stimsaves.com. Spare time is money. Question everything.
Graham Phillips stands before the potential burial mound of King Arthur. He reflects on the significance of the discovery. According to him, the geophysics scan revealed an oval-shaped pit approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across, which is consistent with Roman-era burials. The presence of a large iron object, likely a shield, within the pit suggests that this could indeed be the final resting place of the legendary king. Witnesses from the local community have reported finding fragments of ancient pottery and other artifacts near the site, which further supports the theory. Records show that the area was once a lake, drained centuries ago to create farmland. The natural hill, now surrounded by trees and pylons, would have been an island in the middle of the lake during Arthur's time. This location fits perfectly with the description of the Battle of Camlan, where Arthur is said to have died. This connection adds weight to the theory that the burial mound behind him could be the final resting place of the historical King Arthur. However, not everyone shares Graham's enthusiasm about his findings, citing the lack of concrete evidence and the amateur nature of his investigation. They argue that without rigorous excavation and analysis, it is impossible to confirm the identity of the remains. Despite these criticisms, Graham remains confident in his research. He points out that his approach has been to follow the original source material, including ancient texts and archaeological records, rather than relying on secondary sources or speculation. His dedication to uncovering the truth about King Arthur has led him to a specific location, where he believes the answers lie. As we stand alongside Graham gazing at the potential burial mound, is truly the burial mound of the legendary king? This finding is significant because it suggests that the mound may indeed contain human remains from around 1,500 years ago. Graham explains that the presence of a large iron object, likely a shield, within the pit is a crucial piece of evidence. According to the legend, Arthur's main forces were encamped a mile away from the battlefield, near a Roman fort. Graham believes that this fort is located on the top of the nearby hill, which aligns with the geography described in the Old Welsh poem. The excavation process will involve careful digging and analysis of the soil and any artifacts found. Graham hopes to use advanced techniques such as radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis to determine the age and identity of the remains. If the results support his theory, it would be a groundbreaking. The documentary ends with the shot of the potential burial mound, surrounded by trees and pylons, as Graham reflects on the significance of the discovery. This could be the moment when we finally uncover the truth about King Arthur, he says, his voice filled with excitement and anticipation. The site, located in a sleepy Shropshire village called Basechurch, has been identified by Graham as a possible location for the historical King Arthur's final resting place. The mound itself is situated on a natural hill, which would have been an island in the middle of a lake during Arthur's time. Graham's team conducted a geophysics scan of the area, which revealed an oval-shaped pit approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across. Within this pit, they detected a large iron object, likely a shield, which is consistent with the type of burial practices used by the ancient Britain. The fact that the shield is made of iron suggests that it may have been imported from a distant land, possibly from the Roman Empire. Graham's research has also led him to believe that the burial mound contains human remains from around 1,500 years ago. Graham's findings have sparked controversy among professional academics and historians, who argue that without rigorous excavation and analysis, it is impossible to confirm the identity of the remains. We've got to confirm the identity of the remains, and we've got evidence that suggests it may contain human remains from around 1,500 years ago. If we can confirm the identity of the remains, it would be a major breakthrough in our understanding of one of history's most enduring legends. Graham's proposal for excavation will soon be submitted to the relevant authorities. As we continue, but what exactly does this mean? And what are the implications of such a discovery? Witnesses state that the shield was found in an oval-shaped pit approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across, which is consistent with the type of burial practices used by the ancient Britons. Records show that the Romans, who were known for their advanced metalworking techniques, may have imported the iron used to make the shield from distant lands. This raises interesting questions about the cultural exchange and trade networks of the time. How did the shield end up in this particular burial mound? Was it brought here by the deceased warrior themselves, or was it added as part of a later ritual or ceremony? Graham's team conducted a geophysics scan of the area, which revealed the presence of several other objects beneath the surface. These include what appears to be a wooden structure, possibly a small hut or dwelling, and a series of earthworks that say. When asked about the significance of these findings, Graham explains that they provide strong evidence for his theory. The presence of a shield, combined with the other archaeological features we've discovered, makes a compelling case for this being the burial mound of King Arthur, he says. But not everyone agrees with Graham's assessment. They point out that the absence of any concrete evidence, such as written records or artifacts explicitly linked to King Arthur, makes it difficult to draw firm conclusions. He believes that the cumulative weight of the evidence, combined with the historical context, provides a strong foundation for his proposal. We're not just talking about a legend or a myth, he says. We're talking about a real person who lived and died over 1,500 years ago. And if we can uncover the truth about his final resting place, it will be a major breakthrough in our understanding of one of history's most enduring legends. In order to move forward, Graham needs permission to conduct further excavations at the site. If granted, If granted, this could potentially uncover more evidence to support his theory. However, the process is complex and requires collaboration between various stakeholders, including local authorities, archaeologists, and historians. Graham acknowledges the challenges ahead, but remains optimistic. I believe that with the right approach and resources, we can unlock the secrets of the site and shed new light on one of history's greatest mysteries, he says. As we leave the potential burial mound behind, we are left with more questions than answers. What lies beneath the surface of this enigmatic site? Their tireless efforts may one day uncover the truth about the legendary king's final resting place, shedding new light. Graham's team conducted a first to be a wooden structure and earthworks suggest that this was a deliberate burial rather than a random deposition of artifacts. Graham's team conducted a thorough examination of the shield, which measures approximately 2 feet long and 1 foot wide. Graham's team also discovered several other objects beneath the surface, including what appears to be a small hut or dwelling. We need more evidence before we can say for certain that this is the burial mound of King Arthur, they argue. Despite these reservations, Graham remains optimistic. Only further investigation will tell. The sun casts a warm glow over the rolling hills and the gentle breeze rustles through the trees. It's hard to imagine that this serene setting could hold the secrets of one of history's most enduring legends. Graham's team can explain the significance of the findings so far. Dr. Emma Taylor, a historian context of the site, remains convinced that his theory has merit. We're talking about a real person who lived and died over 1,500 years ago. To better understand the context of the site, we visit the nearby village of Bass Church. Local residents share stories about the area's rich history, including tales of ancient rituals and burials. One elderly resident, Mrs. Jenkins, recounts a family legend passed down through generations. My great-grandfather used to tell me about the King's Mound, a sacred place where the ancient Britons buried their chieftains, she says. Further research reveals that the village of Bass Church was indeed an important center for early Christianity in Britain. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of several churches dating back to the post-Roman period, which would have been around the time of King Arthur's supposed reign. As we delve deeper into the site, we're looking at a deliberate rather than a random deposition of artifacts, he notes. Dr. Taylor remains unconvinced, however. While the findings are certainly interesting, we need more concrete evidence to link them to King Arthur specifically, she reiterates. In the next installment of our documentary series, we'll explore the historical context of King Arthur's supposed reign and examine the archaeological evidence from other sites across Britain. Join us as we continue the search for the legendary king. As we continue our investigation into the life and death of King Arthur, we find ourselves in the picturesque village of Bass Church, nestled in the rolling hills of Shropshire. Our guide, Graham Phillips, leads us through the village, pointing out various landmarks and sharing his insights on the local history. We're standing here in the heart of the village, surrounded by ancient earthworks and burial mounds, Graham explains. It believed that this mound held secrets of the past, and that one day, they would be uncovered. Graham nods in agreement. The villagers have always known about the significance of this site, But until recently, it remained a mystery to outsiders. Now, thanks to our research, we're starting to unravel the threads of history that connect this place to King Arthur. As we walk through the village, we notice several ancient earthworks, including a large burial mound that Graham believes may hold the key to understanding King Arthur's final resting place. This mound is unlike any other in the area, he notes. It's larger than the others, and its shape suggests that it was deliberately constructed to honor a high-status individual. We make our way to the mound, where Graham begins to explain the geophysics scan results. Our scans revealed a large, oval-shaped pit beneath the surface, approximately 6 feet deep and 2 feet wide. The presence of a shield, combined with other archaeological features, provides strong evidence for my theory. As we examine the shield further, we notice that it measures approximately 2 feet long and 1 foot wide. According to local records, the village of Church has been home to human habitation since the Bronze Age, with evidence of early Christian churches and burials dating back to the post-Roman period. Witnesses state that the villagers have always known about the significance of this site, but until recently, it remained a mystery to outsiders. Records show that the burial mound in question is one of the largest in the area, measuring approximately 30 feet in diameter and 10 feet high. Archaeologists believe that it was deliberately constructed to honor a high-status individual, possibly even King Arthur himself. The geophysics scan results reveal a large, oval iron. The shield further, noting its iron construction and the possibility that it was made by skilled craftsmen. The villagers share their stories and legends about the site, adding to the rich tapestry of history that surrounds this enigmatic place. As we delve deeper into the site, we begin to understand the significance of the burial mound and its connection to King Arthur. But the questions remain, is this really the final resting place of King Arthur? As we stand before the burial mound, Graham Phillips begins to explain the significance of this site. Its shape suggests that it was deliberately constructed to honor a high-status individual. We make our way around the mound, taking note of its size and shape. Graham points out several ancient earthworks in the surrounding area, including a series of smaller burial mounds. These earthworks date back to the same period as the main burial mound, he explains. They were likely built. This pit is a manitation of Ive Taylor, an archaeologist from the nearby university, joins us at the site. I must say, I'm impressed by the thoroughness of your research, Mr. Phillips, she says, but I do have some reservations about the interpretation of these findings. Graham nods respectfully. I understand your concerns, Dr. Taylor. However, I believe that my theory has merit. Taylor smiles wryly. I think you may be onto something, Mr. Phillips, but we need to be careful not to jump to conclusions. We'll need to conduct further excavations and analysis before we can confirm anything. Graham nods in agreement. Of course, Dr. Taylor, I completely agree, but I believe that this site holds the key to understanding King Arthur's final resting place. According to local legend, the villagers have the presence of a shield combined with other archaeological features provides strong evidence for my theory. We make our way around the mound, taking note of its size and shape. They were likely built to honor members of the local community, but the larger mound is clearly special. Taylor, an archaeologist from the nearby university, joins us at the site. However, I believe that my theory has merit. He pauses, considering his next words carefully. The shield itself is a significant find. It measures approximately 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, made from iron and bearing the markings of skilled craftsmen. Dr. Taylor raises an eyebrow. That's certainly intriguing, she says, but I believe that this site holds the key to understanding King Arthur's final resting place. As we examine the shield further, we notice that it appears to be made from a single piece of iron, expertly crafted and polished to a high shine. And as we stand before the burial mound, we cannot help but wonder what secrets lie hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered. We're here because of a fascinating connection between this village and King Arthur, Graham explains. According to local records, the churches of Vasa, which date back to the post-Roman period, were the final resting place of the kings of Paris. Graham points to a small hill on the outskirts of the village, where a geophysics scan had revealed a large, oval-shaped pit beneath the surface. This is the site where we believe King Arthur may have been buried, he says. We make our way to the top of the hill, where Graham begins to explain the significance of the site. It measures approximately 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, made from iron and bearing the markings of skilled craftsmen. As we examine the shield further, we notice that it appears to be made from a single piece of iron. Will he find what he's looking for? The search for King Arthur continues, and we're honored to be along for the ride. We'll see you next time on the search for King Arthur. I must say, Mr. Phillips, your research has been thorough, she says. It's clear that skilled craftsmen were involved in its creation. Dr. Taylor takes notes as Graham continues to explain the significance of the shield. The markings on the shield suggest that it was made during the post-Roman period, around the 5th century AD, he says. According to local records, the churches of Bassa, which date back to the post-Roman period, were the final resting place of the kings of Paris. Graham points to a small hill on the outskirts of the village, where a geophysics scan had revealed a large, oval-shaped pit beneath the surface. I believe that this site holds the key to understanding King Arthur's final resting place. It resaid before the burial mound, Graham explained. Dr. Taylor takes notes as Graham continues to explain the significance of the shield. The markings on the shield suggest that it was made during the post-Roman period, around the 5th century AD, he says. But I'm not convinced that this shield is connected to King Arthur. Graham nods thoughtfully. But let me show you something else that I believe will change your mind. He leads us to a nearby area where a team of archaeologists are carefully excavating a series of earthworks, and I believe they may hold the key to understanding King Arthur's final battle. As we watch, the archaeologists carefully brush away dirt and debris from one of the earthworks. Beneath the surface, a series of ancient stones come into view. Look at this, Graham says, his voice filled with excitement. These stones bear the markings of a great leader, and I believe that these stone here, the Arthur Pendragon, built to honor King Arthur's memory. As we continue to examine the earthworks, Graham points out several other interesting features. See this stone here? He asks. It bears the inscription Uther Pendragon. That's the name of King Arthur's father, according to legend. Dr. Taylor's eyes widen as she takes in the significance of the discovery. If we can confirm that these earthworks are connected to King Arthur, it would be a major breakthrough in our understanding of the legendary king. Graham smiles. I knew you'd see it my way, Doctor. Now, let's get back to work and see if we can uncover more evidence of King Arthur's presence here. As we continue our investigation, we begin to realize the magnitude of Graham's discovery. If he is correct, it would mean that King Arthur's final resting place has been hidden in plain sight all along. But for now, join us next time on the search for King Arthur as we delve deeper into the mystery of the legendary king. Let me show you something else that I believe will change your mind, he says. And I believe they may hold the key to understanding King Arthur's final battle, Graham says. As we watch, the archaeologists carefully brush away dirt and debris from one of the earthworks, and according to local records, this was the final resting place of the kings of Paris. Graham points to a small hill on the outskirts of the village. Taylor looks at Graham with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. But how can we be sure that this is indeed King Arthur's final resting place? She asks. Graham smiles. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But I believe that we have enough evidence to suggest that this is indeed the case. As we continue to discuss the implications of Graham's discovery, we begin to realize the magnitude of what we may be looking at. We continue our investigation, following Graham as he leads us through the village, pointing out various landmarks and features that may hold clues to the mystery of King Arthur's final resting place. As we walk, Graham explains the significance of each location, providing context and background information that helps to clarify the situation. We learn about the history of the village, the culture of the people who lived there, and the events that may have led to King Arthur's final battle. As the sun begins to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, we come to a stop before a small church. Graham points to a stone monument outside the church. That's the grave of a great leader, he says. Taylor looks at Graham with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Graham smiles. I'm not sure, he says, but I have a feeling that we're about to uncover something incredible. As we walk, Graham explains the final resting place. We come to a stop before a small church. This church dates back to the 12th century, Graham explains, and it's located in the heart of the village where King Arthur is said to have fought his final battle. Taylor leans forward, her interest piqued. And what makes you think that King Arthur's grave is inside this church? Graham nods. Well, according to local records, this church was built on the site of an ancient pagan temple, and legend has it that the temple was dedicated to the worship of the god of war, which would have been revered by King Arthur and his men. As we enter the church, Graham points out several intricate carvings on the walls. These carvings depict scenes from the Battle of Camlan, which is said to be King Arthur's final battle. And if you look closely, you can see a figure in the center of one of the carvings that bears a striking resemblance to King Arthur himself. Dr. Taylor examines the carvings carefully. The level of But I believe that we have enough evidence to suggest that this church is indeed connected to King Arthur's final battle. And I'd like to take you to a nearby location that I believe will change your mind forever. We follow Graham outside the church, where he leads us to a small hill overlooking the village. As we climb to the top, Graham points out several earthworks that have been hidden beneath the grass. These earthworks date back to the Roman era, Graham explains, and they're believed to be the remains of a great leader's tomb. According to local legend, this tomb was built to honor the memory of King Arthur himself. As we examine the earthworks more closely, Dr. Taylor notices something peculiar. "Look at this inscription on the stone," she says, pointing to a worn-out symbol etched into the surface. Graham's eyes light up. That's the mark of Uther Pendragon, King Arthur's father. It's a clear indication of a series of ancient artifacts buried beneath the earth, including a sword and a shield that bear the markings of King Arthur's coat of arms. Taylor exclaims, "I know it sounds far-fetched, but I truly believe that we're on the verge of uncovering the truth about King Arthur's final resting place. And I'm not just talking about the church or the earthworks, I'm talking about the entire village itself." As we continue our exploration of the village, we begin to realize the magnitude of Graham's discovery. As we continued our investigation, we began to piece together the events leading up to King Arthur's final battle. According to local records, the Battle of Camlann took place in the year 537 AD, near the village of Bossa, in what is now modern-day Shropshire, England. Witnesses state that King Arthur led his army against his treacherous nephew Mordred, who had betrayed him and joined forces with the Saxons. The terrain was rugged and unforgiving, with steep hills and narrow valleys that favored the defensive positions of the Saxon army. We followed Graham to a nearby hill, where he pointed out a small stream that flowed through the valley below. This stream, known as the River Commod, was the site of the final confrontation between King Arthur and Mordred, he said. According to legend, the two armies clashed in a fierce and bloody battle, with King Arthur ultimately falling to his death at the hands of his own nephew. As we examined the landscape more closely, it's a clear indication that this tomb is indeed connected to King Arthur's family. We continued our investigation, following a series of ancient artifacts that led us deeper into the village. As we explored the earthworks, we came across several other clues that suggested a strong connection between the church and King Arthur's final battle. Yes, the evidence suggests that this village has been a place of pilgrimage for centuries, with people coming from all over to pay their respects to King Arthur's memory. As we concluded our investigation, we realized that the search for King Arthur's final resting place was far from over. But one thing was certain: the village of Bossa held secrets that would continue to fascinate historians and enthusiasts alike for generations to come. In the next installment of our documentary, we will delve deeper into the history of the village and explore the significance of the artifacts we discovered. Join us as we continue our journey to uncover the truth about King Arthur's final resting place. As we conclude our investigation of the village of Bossa, it becomes clear that the search for King Arthur's final resting place is far from over. The discovery of the earthwork, however, there are still many unanswered questions, and further research is needed to confirm the extent of the village's involvement in the king's life and death. One of the most intriguing aspects of the village's history is its location near the site of the Battle of Camlann. Records show that the battle was fierce and bloody, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The terrain was rugged and unforgiving, with steep hills and narrow valleys that favored the defensive positions of the Saxon army, he says. King Arthur's army, on the other hand, was forced to fight on more open ground, which made them vulnerable to the Saxon cavalry. As we examine the landscape more closely, Dr. Taylor points out a small stream that flows through the valley below. One of the most striking features of the earthworks is a large stone monument that bears an inscription. According to local legend, this monument marks the grave of King Arthur himself. Graham Phillips examines the inscription. According to local records, the battle was fought over a period of several days, with King Arthur's army ultimately emerging victorious. However, the victory came at a great cost, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Graham Phillips explains that the aftermath of the battle was marked by a period of mourning and reflection. King Arthur's death was a devastating blow to his people, he says. It marked the end of an era and the beginning of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in British history. As we conclude our investigation of the village of Bossa, it becomes clear that the search for King Arthur's final resting place is far from over. The discovery of the earthworks, the inscription on the stone, and the artifacts buried beneath the earth have all contributed to a compelling case for the village's connection to King Arthur's legacy. However, there are still many unanswered questions, and further research is needed. Graham Phillips, a renowned historian and expert on the subject, has been leading our team through the rolling hills and picturesque villages of Wales, searching for clues that might lead us to the legendary king's tomb. Our journey takes us to the village of Bossa, a sleepy Shropshire hamlet nestled in the heart of the Welsh countryside. It's here that we hope to uncover evidence of King Arthur's presence, and perhaps even find the final resting place of the man himself. Graham leads us to a small earthwork, a low mound of earth surrounded by a ring of stones. This is the site of the church mentioned in the poem, he explains, and according to local legend, this is where King Arthur's body was laid to rest. We begin to examine the earthwork more closely, taking note of the intricate patterns of stones that surround it. Graham points out a series of inscriptions etched into the surface of the earth, which appear to be They may hold the key to understanding the significance of the site, and perhaps even reveal the location of King Arthur's tomb. As we continue our investigation, we come across a series of ancient artifacts scattered throughout the village. There's a fragment of pottery, a piece of metalwork, and a small stone statue that appears to depict a figure in armor. These finds suggest that the village of Bossa was an important center of trade and commerce during the medieval period, says Graham. It's possible that King Arthur himself visited this village or even stayed here for a time. We press on, following a series of ancient pathways that wind their way through the village. Along the way, we notice a series of small markers etched into the walls of the houses, each bearing a symbol or inscription. These marks are known as boundary stones, explains. The Battle of Records, the stream was the site of a great battle fought between King Arthur's army and the forces of the Saxon invaders. The Battle of Camlan was a pivotal moment in British history, says Graham. It marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in the country's development, and it's here, in this very valley, that we believe King Arthur's final battle took place. We conclude our investigation with a sense of awe and wonder at the rich history and culture of the village of Bossa. As we stand before the earthwork, Graham Phillips points out the intricate patterns of stone surrounding it. Graham points out the symbols, which appear to be some sort of ancient language. As we leave the village of Bossa, we reflect on the significance of what we've discovered. The earthwork, the Ogham script, the ancient artifacts all point to a deep connection between the village and the legend of King Arthur. But there's still much. We nod in agreement, eager to uncover more evidence of King Arthur's presence in this village. And perhaps, just perhaps, we'll find the final resting place of the man himself. We nod in agreement, eager to continue the journey. For now, we can only speculate about the secrets that lie beneath the earthwork. Graham Phillips explains the significance of the Ogham script etched into its surface. These symbols are believed to date back to the early Christian era, he says. They were used to mark burial sites and may hold the key to understanding the location of King Arthur's tomb. Graham begins to carefully transcribe the Ogham script, taking note of the intricate patterns and symbols. This particular symbol, he points out, is known as Bex and is associated with the god Belinus. It's possible that this was a sacred site, used for rituals and ceremonies. As we examine the earthwork more closely, we notice a series of Graham carefully brushes away the dirt and debris surrounding the curbstones, revealing a series of intricate carvings. These carvings depict scenes from ancient mythology, he says. It's possible that they were used to tell stories and pass down traditions to future generations. We continue our investigation, following a series of ancient pathways that wind their way through the village. As we make our way back to the car, Graham points out a small inscription on the wall of a nearby house. This inscription reads, Bossa 1350, he says. It's a reminder that this village has been inhabited for centuries, and that its history stretches far beyond the legend of King Arthur. We get into the car, and Graham begins to drive us back to our starting point. Graham reflects on the significance of what we've discovered in the village of Bossa. We arrive at the local museum. So, Dr. Taylor, can you tell us about the significance of the earthwork we saw earlier? Graham asks. Yes, of course, Doctor. It was likely used as a burial site for high-ranking members of society. Graham nods thoughtfully. And what about the Ogham script etched into its surface? Can you tell us more about that? Dr. Taylor smiles. Ah, yes. The Ogham script is a fascinating example of ancient Celtic writing. It's believed to have originated in Ireland and was later adopted by other Celtic tribes throughout Britain. The script is composed of intricate symbols that convey meaning and significance. Graham leans forward, his eyes shining with interest. Can you translate some of the symbols for us? Dr. Taylor nods and begins to carefully transcribe the Ogham script. It's possible that this was a sacred site used for rituals and ceremonies. As we continue our conversation with they were used to mark the boundaries of ancient burial sites and may have held spiritual significance for the people who built them. Graham looks up from his notebook, his eyes sparkling with excitement. And what about the carvings on the curbstones? Can you tell us more about those? Dr. Taylor smiles. Ah, yes. The carvings depict scenes from ancient mythology and are believed to have been used to tell stories and pass down traditions to future generations. As our conversation comes to a close, Graham thanks Dr. Taylor for her time and expertise. We leave the museum, our minds buzzing with new information and insights. Next, we head to the nearby town of Ludlow, where Graham has arranged for an interview with a local historian, Mr. John Smith. Mr. Smith greets us warmly and leads us to a cozy cafe, where we settle in for a chat. So, Mr. Smith, according to local legend, Arthur's final battle took place near the village of Bossa, where we visited earlier today. Graham's eyes light up with interest. And what about the location of Arthur's tomb? Do you think it might be hidden somewhere in the area? Mr. Smith shrugs. Well, that's a good question. Some people believe that Arthur's tomb might be hidden beneath the earthwork we saw earlier, while others think it might be located elsewhere in the region. As our conversation comes to a close, Graham thanks Mr. Smith for his time and insights. We leave Ludlow, our minds still reeling with questions and possibilities. As we continue our journey through the countryside, Graham points out various landmarks and historical sites related to the legend of King Arthur. We stop at a small church, where he explains that this is one of the few remaining examples of a medieval church that dates back to the time of King Arthur. This church was built. Aaron begins to explain the significance of various features, including the stained glass windows and the ornate altar. As we walk through the church, I notice a series of ancient-looking stones embedded in the wall. What are these stones? I ask Graham. They're called curbstones, he replies. They were used to mark the boundaries of ancient burial sites and may have held spiritual significance for the people who built them. Graham pulls out a small notebook and begins to scribble down notes. Can you tell us more about their history? The church's curator, a kind-eyed woman named Mrs. Jenkins, approaches us. They date back to the 5th century, and it's believed that they were brought here from an even older site. Mrs. Jenkins leads us to a small exhibit area, where she shows us a series of photographs and diagrams illustrating the history of the curbstones. These stones were likely used as I'd like to get some close-up shots of the Ogham script, he says. Jenkins nods. Of course, please go ahead, but be careful not to damage the stones in any way. Graham carefully takes several photographs, making sure to capture every detail of the Ogham script. Graham thinks for a moment before responding. Well, it seems clear that the legend of King Arthur has a deep connection to the natural world and the land itself. These curbstones and Ogham script suggest that the ancient Celts had a profound respect for the earth and its rhythms. We continue on our journey, stopping at various historical sites and landmarks related to the legend of King Arthur. Along the way, Graham shares his insights and theories about the significance of these discoveries. As the sun begins to set, we arrive at a small village nestled in any way. Graham points out a large. We approach the monument, and Graham begins to explain its history and significance. As we stand before the stone, I feel a sense of awe and wonder at the sheer scale and grandeur of this ancient relic. Do you think there's any truth to the legend of King Arthur being buried here? Graham shrugs. It's impossible to say for certain, but it's certainly possible that this monument marks the final resting place of a legendary figure from the past. As the sun dips below the horizon, we reluctantly leave the village, our minds buzzing with new ideas and insights. We continue on our journey, eager to uncover more secrets and revelations about the legend of King Arthur. As we continued our journey, Graham explained that the next stop was the site of the Battle of Camlan, where King Arthur was said to have fought his final battle. According to the Mabinogion, a collection of ancient relic and the grandeur of this ancient relic. Do you think there's any? We arrived at the site, which was marked by a small stone monument. Graham began to explain the significance of the battle, citing various sources, including the works of Geoffrey of Monmouth and Sir Thomas Malory. He noted that the battle was said to have taken place around 500 AD during the reign of King Arthur, and that it was a pivotal moment in British history. As we walked through the village, Graham pointed out several landmarks, including the Church of St. Sinhafod, which dates back to the 12th century. He explained that the church was built on the site of an earlier Christian settlement, and that it contains several ancient stones and artifacts. One of these stones, a large granite slab, bears an inscription in Ogham script, which Graham translated as, "The Battle of Camlan, where the great king fell." Graham also showed us a series of ancient earthworks, which he believed were the remains of an old fort. As we walked along the earthworks, Graham pointed out several features, including a series of ditches and banks, which he believed were designed to protect against invading forces. After leaving the village, we traveled to the nearby town of Bass Church, where Graham believed that King Arthur was buried. According to local legend, the burial site is located on a small hill overlooking the town, and it is marked by a large stone monument. Graham explained that this monument dates back to the 12th century, and that it is believed to be the final resting place of King Arthur. Graham identified them as curbstones, which were used to mark the boundaries of ancient burial sites. He explained that these stones date back to the 5th century, and that they may have held spiritual significance for the people who built them. Graham pulled out his camera and began to take photographs of the curbstones, making sure to capture every detail of the Ogham script. Graham pointed out a large stone monument in the center of the village, which he believed marked the final resting place of King Arthur. "Do you think there's any truth to the legend of King Arthur being buried here?" Graham shrugged. "It's impossible to say for certain, but it's certainly possible that this monument marked the final resting place of a legendary figure from the past." As we continued our journey, Graham led us to the village of Riddy Groes, where the Battle of Camlan was said to have taken place. According to the Mabinogion, a collection of ancient Welsh tales, the battle occurred around 500 AD during the reign of King Arthur. This church was built on the site of an earlier Christian settlement, Graham explained. The church contains several ancient stones and artifacts, including this large granite slab with an inscription in Ogham script. Graham translated the inscription as "The Battle of Camlan, where the great king fell." They may have been used for defensive purposes, such as protecting against invading forces. As we explored the earthworks, Graham pointed out several features, including a series of ditches and banks. These ditches and banks would have provided a barrier against enemy forces, Graham said. The earthworks also suggest that the area was heavily fortified, indicating the importance of the location. After leaving the village, we traveled to the nearby town of Bass Church, where Graham believed that King Arthur was buried. Records show that the monument has been associated with King Arthur's burial since at least the 13th century. As we approached the monument, Graham pointed out several curbstones surrounding the site. These curbstones are typical of ancient burial sites, Graham pointed out several features, and Graham pointed. "I want to make sure I get a good record of these markings," Graham said. "The fact that he is said to be buried here the results indicate a large oval-shaped pit, approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across. This is consistent with ancient burial practices in the center of the scan. This represents a large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact," Graham said. "The presence of a shield or other metal artifact," Graham said. "The presence of a shield suggests that the individual buried here may have been a high-status warrior, consistent with the legend of King Arthur." As we continued to discuss the implications of the discovery, Graham mentioned that the next stop on our journey would be the site of the Battle of Camlan, where King Arthur was said to have fought his final battle. Witnesses state that the battle was a pivotal moment in British history, marking the end of the reign of King Arthur. Witnesses state that the monument has been associated. The next that he is said to be buried here suggests that he was deeply connected to this place and its people. Graham led us to a nearby field where a geophysics scan had been conducted. "This scan shows a possible burial site beneath the surface," Graham explained. "The results indicate a large oval-shaped pit approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across. This is consistent with ancient burial practices in the region." Graham pointed out a large black oblong shape in the center of the scan. "This represents a large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact," Graham said. "The presence of a shield suggests that the individual buried here may have been a high-status warrior, consistent with the legend of King Arthur." As we continued to discuss the implications of the discovery, Graham mentioned that the next stop on our journey would be the site of the Battle of. Witnesses state that the monument has been associated with King Arthur's burial since at least the 13th century. As we approached the monument, Graham pointed out several curbstones surrounding the site. These curbstones are typical of ancient burial sites, Graham explained. I want to make sure I get a good record of these markings, Graham said. The fact that he is said to be buried here suggests that he was deeply connected to this place and its people. Graham led us to a nearby field, where a geophysics scan had been conducted. This scan shows a possible burial site beneath the surface, Graham explained. The results indicate a large oval-shaped pit, approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across. This is consistent with ancient burial practices in the region. Graham pointed out a large black oblong shape in the center of the scan. This represents a large iron object, possibly. The next stop on our journey would be the site of the Battle of Camlan, where King Arthur was said to have fought his final battle. Witnesses state that the battle was a pivotal moment in British history, marking the end of the reign of King Arthur. Witnesses state that the monument has been associated with King Arthur's burial since at least the 13th century. As we approached the monument, Graham pointed out several curbstones surrounding the site. These curbstones are typical of ancient burial sites, Graham explained. I want to make sure I get a good record of these markings, Graham said. The fact that he is said to be buried here suggests that he was deeply connected to this place and its people. Graham led us to a nearby field, where a geophysics scan had been conducted. This scan shows a possible burial site beneath the surface, Graham explained. The results indicate a large oval-shaped pit, approximately 6 feet deep, and this represents a large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact, Graham said. The presence of a shield suggests that the individual buried here may have been a high-status warrior, consistent with the legend of King Arthur. As we continue to discuss the implications of the discovery, Graham mentioned that the next stop on our journey would be the site of the Battle of Camlan, where King Arthur was said to have fought his final battle. Witnesses state that the battle was a pivotal moment in British history, marking the end of the reign of King Arthur. Witnesses state that the monument has been associated with King Arthur's burial since at least the 13th century. As we approached the monument, Graham pointed out several curbstones surrounding the site. These curbstones are typical of ancient burial sites, Graham explained. I want to make sure I get a good record of these markings. This scan shows a possible burial site beneath the surface, Graham explained. The results indicate a large oval-shaped pit, approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across. This is consistent with ancient burial practices in the region. Graham pointed out a large black oblong shape in the center of the scan. This represents a large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact, Graham said. The presence of a shield suggests that the individual buried here may have been a high-status warrior, consistent with the legend of King Arthur. As we continued to discuss the implications of the discovery, Graham mentioned that the next stop on our journey would be the site of the Battle of Camlan, where King Arthur was said to have fought his final battle. Witnesses state that the battle was a pivotal moment in British history, marking the end of the reign of Graham. I want to make sure I get a good record of these markings. Graham led us to a nearby field where a geophysics scan had been conducted. According to local legend, King Arthur was buried in a church near the village of Baschurch, Graham said. We traveled to the village of Baschurch, located in the heart of Shropshire. That's the site where King Arthur is believed to be buried, Graham said. Graham led us to the top of the mound, where a geophysics scan had been conducted. The presence of a shield suggests that the individual buried here may have been a high-status warrior, consistent with the legend of King Arthur. As we stood on the mound, Graham reflected on the significance of the discovery. If this is indeed the final resting place of King Arthur, it would be a major archaeological find, Graham said. It would provide concrete evidence of the existence of one of Britain's most legendary figures. Graham said with a village of buried here may have been a high-status. As we concluded on the importance of preserving King Arthur, Graham said. As we concluded our visit to the site, Graham reflected on the importance of preserving British history. King Arthur may be a legendary figure, but he is also an important part of British heritage, Graham said. By uncovering the truth about his life and death, we can gain a deeper understanding of our shared past. As we stood on the mound, Graham explained the significance of the geophysics scan results. The oval-shaped pit, approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across, is consistent with ancient burial practices in the region, he said. The large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact, is a key indicator of a high-status warrior. Graham pointed to a nearby curbstone. It's a marker indicating the location of a grave. He took out a notebook and began to sketch the markings on the. He looked up at the surrounding landscape. We traveled to the site of the Battle of Camlan, located near the village of Bass Church. As we arrived, Graham began to explain the significance of this location. He looked up at the surrounding landscape. As we stood on the mound, Graham reflected on the significance of the discovery. As we continued our journey to uncover the secrets of King Arthur's final battle, Graham led us to the site of the Battle of Camlan. The sun was setting over the rolling hills of Shropshire, casting a golden glow over the landscape. This is the site where King Arthur fought his final battle, Graham explained, his eyes scanning the horizon. According to local legend, Arthur's army clashed with the forces of Mordred, his illegitimate son, in a fierce and bloody conflict. Graham walked towards a small monument in the center of the field, its stone surface weathered by time. He looked up at the site of the battle. It reads, "Here lies the body of King Arthur who fell in battle against his treacherous son, Mordred." As we approached the monument, Graham began to describe the events leading up to the battle. Records show that Arthur's kingdom was divided among his nobles after his marriage to Guinevere, he said. However, Mordred, who had been secretly plotting against his father, seized power and declared himself king. Graham paused, surveying the surrounding landscape. The Battle of Camlan was a pivotal moment in British history, he said. It marked the end of the reign of King Arthur and the beginning of a new era for the kingdom. We spent several hours exploring the site, taking in the atmosphere and imagining the events that unfolded here centuries ago. Graham pointed out various landmarks, including a nearby hill where Arthur's army was said to have camped below the horizon. Graham led us back to our vehicle, tired but satisfied with the The next morning, we arrived at the site of the burial mound, located near the village of Bass Church. The presence of a shield suggests that the individual buried here may have been a high-status warrior, consistent with the legend of King Arthur, Graham said, pointing to the scan results on his tablet. This is a significant discovery, as it provides concrete evidence of the existence of one of Britain's most legendary figures. As we stood on the mound, Graham reflected on the significance of the discovery. It would provide a tangible connection to the past and shed new light on the life and death of this enigmatic figure. Graham's research has sparked controversy among academics who question the validity of his findings. By uncovering the truth about his life and death, we can gain a deeper understanding of our shared past. Graham began to sketch the markings on the curbstone, which indicate, according to the geophysics scan, there was a large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact, buried beneath the surface. Graham pointed to the scan results on his tablet. Graham's team has been working tirelessly to uncover the secrets of the burial mound. They have conducted extensive research, poring over ancient texts and scouring the countryside for clues. Their efforts have paid off, and they believe they are closing in on the location of King Arthur's grave. As we left the burial mound, Graham turned to me and said, "I'm convinced that we're on the right track. We just need to keep digging and see what we find." His enthusiasm was infectious, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation for what the future might hold. The search for King Arthur's final resting place is a complex and challenging task. It requires a deep understanding of history, archaeology, and the cultural. As we walked back away from the burial mound, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface. Would they uncover the tomb of King Arthur, or would their search remain forever fruitless? As we continued our journey, Graham led us to a nearby hill, where he explained that this was the site of Arthur's army's encampment before the Battle of Camlan. "This is where the legend says Arthur's men were stationed," he said, pointing to a small copse of trees. "It's a strategic location with a clear view of the surrounding area." We spent some time exploring the hill, taking in the atmosphere and imagining the events that unfolded here centuries ago. Graham pointed out various landmarks, including a nearby stream that flowed into the River Camel. This stream would have provided water for Arthur's men, he said, and it's possible that they used the nearby woods as cover during the battle. As we walked back down the hill, but it's also a reminder of the brutal nature of war and the sacrifices made by those who fought on both sides. We arrived at the village of Bass Church in the late afternoon, where Graham led us to a small field near the church. "This is the site of the burial mound that I believe may be the final resting place of King Arthur," he said, his eyes scanning the horizon. According to local legend, Arthur's body was brought here after the Battle of Camlan and buried in a grand ceremony. Graham began to explain the significance of the burial mound, pointing out various features that suggested it was an ancient monument. If we can confirm that this is indeed the burial site of King Arthur, it would provide a tangible connection to the past and shed new light on the life and death of this enigmatic figure, he said. "We just need to keep digging and see what we find." The search for King Arthur's final resting place is a complex and challenging The next morning, we arrived at the site of the geophysics scan, where Graham explained the process used to detect the possible burial site. We used a combination of ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography to create a detailed image of the subsurface, he said, and what we found was a large iron object, possibly a shield or other metal artifact, buried beneath the surface. Graham showed me the scan results on his tablet, pointing out various features that suggested the presence of a grave. The oval-shaped pit is consistent with the type of burial used by the ancient Britons, he said. This could be a major breakthrough in our understanding of King Arthur's life and death, he said. But we need to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves. We still have a lot of work to do before we can confirm whether this is indeed the burial site of King Arthur. The search for King Arthur's final resting place. These could be a major breakthrough in our understanding of King Arthur's life and death. I asked Graham to elaborate on the process of conducting the geophysics scan. These techniques allow us to non-invasively map the underground structure without disturbing the soil or artifacts. Graham pointed out several key features on the scan results, including a large iron object buried beneath the surface. I asked Graham about the potential implications of these findings. We spent the next few hours discussing the possibilities and implications of the findings. Graham emphasized the importance of verifying the results through further excavation and analysis. We still have a lot of work to do before we can confirm whether this is indeed the burial site of King Arthur. As we concluded our discussion, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and trepidation. The possibility of uncovering the final resting place of King Arthur was both thrilling distortion that had puzzled scholars for centuries. As we walked through the village, Graham pointed out various landmarks and historical sites. This church dates back to the 12th century, he said. And according to local tradition, it stands near the site of the burial mound where King Arthur was laid to rest. We arrived at the village green, where a small field lay adjacent to the church. Graham led me to the center of the field, pointing out a distinctive earthwork feature. As we examined the earthwork, Graham began to explain its significance. According to local legend, Arthur's body was brought here after the Battle of Camlan and buried in a grand ceremony, he said. The earthwork itself is likely a remnant of an ancient monument, possibly dating back to the Roman era. I asked Graham about the potential archaeological significance of the site. If we can confirm that this is indeed the burial site of King Arthur, it would provide a unique opportunity. As we concluded our visit to the village, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the history that surrounded us. The search for King Arthur's final resting place was a complex and challenging task, but one that held the promise of unlocking new secrets and shedding new light on the past. This is a remarkable find, he said. Local legend claims that King Arthur's body was brought here after the Battle of Camlan and buried in a grand ceremony. I asked Graham about the potential archaeological significance of the site. It could also shed new light on the life and death of this enigmatic figure, and perhaps even reveal new insights into the mythology surrounding King Arthur. Graham pointed out various landmarks and historical sites in the village. Graham explained the significance of each one, pointing out the connections between the local legends and historical records. As we continued our exploration, this is likely a remnant of an ancient monument, possibly dating back to the Roman era, he said. I asked Graham about the potential implications of finding a burial site consistent with the legend of King Arthur. If we can confirm that this is indeed the burial site of King Arthur, it would be a major breakthrough in our understanding of his life and death, he replied. We still have a lot of work to do before we can confirm whether this is indeed the burial site of King Arthur, he said. As we concluded our visit to the village, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the history that surrounded us. We returned to Graham's office, where he began to explain the next steps in the process. We need to conduct further geophysics scans to confirm the presence of a grave, he said. And then we'll need to excavate the site to see if we can find any physical evidence of King Arthur. He said as we concluded our visit to the village, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and reverence for the history that surrounded us. But it's worth it if we can finally answer the question of where King Arthur is buried. The search for King Arthur's final resting place was a long and winding road, filled with twists and turns. But with Graham's expertise and dedication, I had no doubt that they would uncover the truth eventually. As we wrapped up our conversation, I asked Graham about his personal connection to the project. I've always been fascinated by the legend of King Arthur, he said, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this project to uncover the truth behind the myth. I left Graham's office feeling inspired by his passion and dedication to the project. According to local legend, the monument marks the final resting place of King Arthur's body after the Battle of Camlan. Graham explained that the earthwork feature is a complex system of embankments and ditches, which would have been used to create a sacred space for. As we examined the earthwork more closely, Graham pointed out several features that suggested it may have been used for ceremonial purposes. Look at the way the embankments are constructed, he said. They're designed to create a sense of enclosure, which would have been important for ritualistic activities. We walked around the edge of the field, taking in the surrounding landscape. Graham explained that the village of Bass Church has a rich history, dating back to the Iron Age. The church itself is medieval, but the village has been occupied since at least the 5th century, he said. As we made our way back to Graham's office, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. Could this really be the final resting place of King Arthur? The evidence was mounting, but we still had a long way to go before we could confirm anything. But it's worth it if we can finally answer the question of where King Arthur is buried. As we wrapped up our conversation, I asked, would we be able to confirm the identity of the burial site, and what secrets lay hidden beneath the earth? As we continued our investigation into the life and death of King Arthur, Graham Phillips led me to a small village nestled in the rolling hills of Shropshire. The village of Bass Church was steeped in history, with records showing that it had been occupied since at least the 5th century. We are here to examine a potential burial site consistent with the legend of King Arthur, Graham explained, his eyes scanning the landscape. It's possible that this monument was built as a tomb for a high-ranking individual, such as a king or chieftain. Witnesses state that the earthwork feature is a remnant of an ancient monument, possibly dating back to the Roman era. As we examined the earthwork more closely, Graham pointed out several features that suggested it may have been used for ceremonial purposes. According to Graham, the excavation process would take at least 6 months to a year, but it would be worth it if they could finally answer the question of where King Arthur is buried. We need to gather more evidence and consult with experts in the field, he said, and then we'll need to present our findings to the academic community. I asked Graham about the timeline for the project. The search for King Arthur's final resting place was a journey that would take us to the very limits of human knowledge and understanding. As we stood on the hill overlooking the village of Bass Church, Graham began to explain the significance of the earthwork feature. It's possible that this monument was built as a tomb for a high-ranking individual, such as a king or chieftain. I looked around at the surrounding landscape, taking in the rolling hills and fields. How do you think this relates to the legend of King Arthur is buried? We need to gather more evidence and consult with experts in the field, he said. Graham led me to a nearby field where a geophysics scan had been conducted earlier that year. Look at this printout, he said, holding up a map of the area. The scan shows an oval-shaped pit about 6 feet deep, which is consistent with the type of burial site we'd expect from the Romano-British period. I studied the map, trying to make sense of the various symbols and markings. What does this black blob represent? I asked Graham, pointing to a large oblong shape in the center of the pit. That's what we're most interested in, Graham replied. The geophysicists believe it may be a large iron object, possibly a shield or a sword. If that's the case, it could be a game changer for our investigation. We spent the next hour discussing the implications of the geophysics scan and the potential significance of the earthwork feature. Over the next few days, Graham and his team conducted further research and gathered report, and they began to piece together a timeline of events leading up to the Battle of Camlan and the subsequent burial of King Arthur. One of the key pieces of evidence they uncovered was a medieval manuscript that described the battle and its aftermath. According to the manuscript, King Arthur's body was taken to the village of Bass Church and buried in a sacred space surrounded by embankments and ditches. Graham showed me the manuscript, pointing out the relevant passages. See here, it says, the king's body was taken to the village of Bass Church and buried in a sacred space. And look, there's a description of the embankments and ditches surrounding the burial site. I studied the manuscript, trying to take it all in. As we continued our investigation, Graham and his team encountered several challenges and setbacks. They faced opposition from local residents who were skeptical, with the discovery of the burial site would not only shed new light on one of history's greatest mysteries, but also provide a unique opportunity for archaeological excavation and preservation. And so, with renewed determination and a fresh perspective, Graham and his team pressed on, driven by a shared passion for discovery and a commitment to uncovering the secrets of the past. It's possible that this monument was built as a tomb for a high-ranking individual, such as a king or chieftain, he said. The earthwork feature, known as an oval-shaped pit, measured approximately 6 feet deep and 6 feet across. This type of burial site was consistent with the Romano-British period, which spanned from around 43 AD to 410 AD. Graham led me to a nearby field, where a geophysics scan had been conducted earlier that year. The scan revealed an oval-shaped. Witnesses state that the burial site was marked by a stone. Records show that the village of Bass Church was an important center for trade and commerce during the Roman era. Archaeologists have discovered evidence of a Roman road running through the village, which suggests that it was a major hub for transportation and communication. It's possible that King Arthur's burial site was chosen due to its strategic location near the Roman road. They also conducted further research and gathered more evidence, including ancient texts and artifacts. According to one historian, the discovery of the burial site would be a significant find, not only for the academic community but also for the general public. The search for King Arthur's final resting place has been ongoing for centuries, with many theories and legends surrounding center for trade and commerce during the Roman era. Graham estimated that the excavation process would take at least 6 months to a year, but he was confident that the end result would be worth it. As we continue to explore the village of Bass Church and the surrounding landscape, we may finally uncover the secrets of one of history's greatest mysteries. This oval-shaped pit is consistent with the Romano-British period, and the presence of a large iron object, possibly a shield or a sword, is a strong indication that this could be the burial site of a high-ranking individual. I asked Graham about the geophysics scan that had been conducted earlier that year. The scan revealed an oval-shaped pit with a large black oblong shape in the center, he replied. This finding is significant because it matches the type of burial site described in medieval manuscripts. Graham led me to a nearby field where a team of archaeologists were busy excavating the earthwork feature. I watched as they carefully uncovered the We're looking for a window into the past, a glimpse of what life was like in ancient Britain. And if we can find that, it will be a truly remarkable discovery. As we stood before the earthwork feature, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. Only time and further research would tell. Graham's team spent the next few days conducting further excavations and gathering more evidence. They used ground-penetrating radar to scan the area and identify any potential burial sites. They also collected samples of soil and debris from the earthwork feature, which would later be analyzed in a laboratory. As the sun began to set on another long day of excavation, Graham gathered his team around him to discuss their findings. It's clear that there's something significant here, he said, but we need to be careful and thorough in our approach. We don't want to rush into anything without making sure that we've got all the facts. With the main obstacles was the lack of funding for the excavation project. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to secure sufficient financial support to proceed with the dig. We've been trying to get funding for this project for years, Graham explained, but every time we think we have a breakthrough, something comes up and we're back to square one. Despite these challenges, Graham remained optimistic about the prospects for finding King Arthur's final resting place. He pointed out that many other archaeological projects had faced similar difficulties, but ultimately yielded significant discoveries. We're not giving up, he said. We're convinced that we're on the right track, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to uncover the secrets of the past. One of the key pieces of evidence that Graham's team had uncovered was an ancient text written by a monk named Bede. According to Bede, King Arthur was buried in a church dedicated to St. Mary. I asked Graham about the significance of the stone monument. What would have happened if someone wanted to find the burial site? I asked. Well, Graham replied, according to legend, the stone monument was placed at the entrance to the burial site. It would have served as a marker indicating the location of the king's grave. As we stood before the earthwork feature, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the sheer scale of the excavation project. The team had spent months digging and clearing the site, and it was clear that they had made significant progress. What's next? I asked Graham. We need to conduct further excavations, he replied. We want to see if we can uncover any more evidence of the burial site. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll even find some artifacts that will help us date the site more accurately. The team began to set up their equipment, preparing for another day. What would they discover next? Would they finally uncover the secrets of King Arthur's final resting place? But one thing was certain, Graham and his team were determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, no matter what it took. As we continued our investigation into the life and death of King Arthur, we found ourselves standing at the edge of a small village in Shropshire, England. Graham Phillips, our guide and expert on all things Arthurian, led the way through the quiet streets, pointing out various landmarks and historical sites along the way. We're here to investigate the possibility that King Arthur's final resting place lies within this village, Graham explained, his eyes scanning the horizon. According to local legend, a church dedicated to St. Mary once stood here, and it's said to be the burial site of the legendary king. As we walked, Graham pointed out several ancient earthworks and mounds. We arrived at the site of the old church, now nothing more than a grassy mound surrounded by crumbling stone walls. Graham began to explain the significance of this location, citing various historical records and documents that pointed to its importance as a potential burial site. The church was built in the 7th century, during the reign of King Offa of Mercia, Graham said, consulting a map. Mary, located near the village of Bass Church. I asked Graham about the significance of the church's dedication to St. Mary. Wasn't she associated with the early Christian church? I asked. Yes, that's correct, Graham replied. St. Mary was a prominent figure in early Christianity, and her association with this church may indicate a connection to the early Christian community in this area. As we explored the site further, Graham's team began to set up their equipment for further excursion.
Stimsaves.com. Spare time is money. Question everything.
In Shropshire's heart, where legends sleep, a secret lies hidden deep. A hand whispers secrets of ancient memories.